Eleanor's Victorian Life, a story to put you to sleep. London, in the heart of the Victorian era, was a city of contrasts. The smoke of factories drifted above the skyline, while horse-drawn carriages rattled across cobblestone streets. Yet within this restless city, there were lives lived not in battles or adventures, but in the quiet rhythm of daily existence. This is the story of Eleanor, a young woman whose world was not shaped by great wars or legendary deeds, but by the simple routine of Victorian life. A life that, though ordinary, carried its own subtle beauty. Eleanor lived in a modest townhouse not far from the banks of the River Thames. The morning sun would slip through the lace curtains of her bedroom, waking her gently. Unlike the bustling merchants or hurried factory workers, her mornings began slowly. She would sit by the small window, gazing at the gray London sky, often veiled by fog. The distant bells of St. Paul's Cathedral rang softly, reminding her that another day had begun. She dressed in a plain but tidy gown, buttoning each piece with patience. Fashion in those times was not simply about appearance, it was a ritual, a quiet discipline. Downstairs, the aroma of tea steeping on the stove awaited her. Her sister, Margaret, often joined her for breakfast. Together they sat at a wooden table, sipping tea, speaking softly, or sometimes saying nothing at all. Their lives, after all, were not filled with drama, but with gentle monotony. On certain days, Eleanor would stroll to the nearby marketplace. The cobblestone roads glistened when wet from morning mist, and shopkeepers arranged fruits, vegetables, and fresh loaves of bread in neat rows. She rarely bought much, but she enjoyed observing the patterns of people's lives, the way bakers dusted their hands with flour, or how children played along the street's edge. These sights, ordinary as they were, carried a sense of rhythm. At home, much of her day was spent reading. She had a small collection of books, histories, poems, and a few novels. With no electricity yet, her world was lit by lamps and candles, and her afternoons often disappeared within pages. She loved particularly the quiet tales of English countryside life, where characters lived slowly, where nothing grand seemed to happen, and yet everything mattered in its stillness. And afternoons were subdued. Margaret would sometimes embroider while Eleanor read aloud softly, her voice blending with the crackle of the fireplace. Outside, the city was alive with horse hooves and the murmur of pubs, but inside their home, time seemed slower. It was not happiness in the loud sense of joy, but in a gentler form, contentment, routine, and quiet survival. And so the days unfolded. Morning tea, marketplace strolls, quiet reading, and dimly lit evenings. To some, such a life might seem dull, uneventful, perhaps even boring. But therein lies its strange beauty. In a restless city, Eleanor's world was a sanctuary of slowness. Her story is not one of drama, but of stillness. And sometimes that stillness is exactly what the heart needs.